So, I rewatched Breaking Bad. Apparently, way back when it was originally airing from 2008 to 2013, apart from the final season, it wasn't a very popular show. And I think it almost got cancelled a couple of times. Thankfully, it didn't, because it is probably one of the best shows, period. I think that. Everyone thinks that. However, it's not the best show ever made, and it's also not perfect. There's one plot point in Season 5 that I noticed on this rewatch that irritates me so much. And it's one really minor plot point, and I understand why they had to do it, but it doesn't make any sense, like, logically, which is what the show is really good at, with characters having very clear, like, aims and wants, and doing very intense things to achieve those goals and wants. Before I get into the nitty gritty of why the show isn't perfect story-wise, I do want to talk about a few things that it does really well. Primarily, Walter's evolution from this kind of pathetic, weaselly introvert to essentially someone who is evil and someone that is quite frightening. Especially, there's a really clever scene in Season 5 where Jesse thinks that Walter's there to kill him, and it's really intense. It's really well performed. The performances in this show, from Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul to Bob Odenkirk, the guy who plays Gus Fring, who is incredible. He's also in The Usual Suspect, by the way, fun fact. The show is peak acting when it comes to television. I think the only other show that I can even think of that comes to the perfection of this acting is like Succession, maybe Band of Brothers, and The Wire. Oh, and Sopranos. God, this show wouldn't exist if Sopranos wasn't successful. One thing that Vince Gilligan is really, really, really good at, and he even does it in Hancock as well, the film that he wrote and directed with Will Smith, is he's really good at building up to a big climax. Like, every scene, well, most scenes in this show is building up to something, which then happens. And he's clearly planned everything ahead. When you start watching the show to when you end the show, you can tell that a lot of things have been planned. But the big moments, like with Walter's cash and with Gus and the whole train heist and just all the small bits and pieces throughout this show, are immensely satisfying. Everything's built up, and then it's very much a reward when you see what happens afterwards through the consequences of the main cast of characters and their actions. A lot of people hate Skylar a lot. On a second rewatch, and I haven't seen this show since it originally finished in 2013, she's not that bad. Her character is perfectly understandable. I don't think she's as annoying as I thought she was when I originally watched the show. Her relationship with Walter, she is the crappier one in the relationship. Like, she does do evil things to Walter in regards to, like, cheating on him, for example. But her performance and her, like, the reason she does the things she does is perfectly understandable. I kind of liked her side story with Ted. I thought that was really cool, and I liked how it ended. It's super jarring with that B plot. It's like, oh, wow. She is kind of a more boring element to the story, but I think she was fine. Another thing that the show does really well is pretty much every episode, most episodes, have like a moment where you go, whew. It's really exhilarating. Some of the episodes, especially early on in Season 1, 2, and 3, have openings or just a one scene that just makes you go, oh, okay, that's where we're going. Which I think not many shows can pull off, other than maybe Game of Thrones kind of did it. Rick and Morty kind of does it as well. But there are a lot of episodes in this show where you're watching it and you go, oh, okay, where are we going now? I'm confused. Okay, I'll talk about the thing that annoys me. It's in the transition from the start of Season 5 to the end of Season 5. And what happens in the story, and I'm going to spoil Season 5 for a 10-year-old show, it's Jesse. Jesse doesn't make any sense in Season 5. So in Season 5, there's a period where him and Walter break up, and Walter owes him $6 million. So Walter gives Jesse $6 million. And instead of running away and taking Brock, the little kid that got poisoned, and his girlfriend, and just running away to Alaska, which is what he does in El Camino, he does this really stupid thing where he tries to get himself arrested, which then leads to him and Hank working together, which I understand why they made him do something stupid with him throwing the cash out of his car, but that doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. Why would he not run away with the money, with his girlfriend and her son? That is the only thing that he should have done. And I know that Jesse's an idiot. There are moments where he's just super stupid. He's also very smart at times as well, but he's not that dumb. He would have taken the $6 million. He wouldn't have given a shit about what happened with Mike and the kid that ends up getting shot by Todd. He would have just run away. I don't know why they didn't do that. He had $6 million, a girlfriend, and a kid. and instead he works with Hank. That's the only bit throughout the entire show I was like, that doesn't make any sense, that's stupid. But I understand why they did it, because they had to get Jesse and Hank together so they could take down Walter, which then leads to like the rest of the season 5. If you think it makes sense, let me know. I have no idea. Before I rewatched the show, I did watch Better Call Saul, which is why I wanted to rewatch Breaking Bad. Watching Breaking Bad now after I've seen Better Call Saul, Mike and Jimmy, Saul Goodman, they are complete side characters. Like, they're very minor. You don't know anything about them other than how they relate to Walter and Jesse. Like, you do know about Mike and his granddaughter, but other than that, you don't really know Saul. You don't even know his name's Jimmy. Like, that's the thing. And you don't even know that Kim exists or that Howard Hemlin happened or anything like any of that stuff. So it was actually really incredible watching this show with the knowledge that I had from Better Call Saul, because it actually made this show a lot more three-dimensional with some of the side characters that don't get fully explored. One question, why didn't that comedy guy come back for Better Call Saul? What's his name? I can't remember it. I'll put a photo up of him. You'll know him. Another thing I like about the show, that it does really well with pretty much all of its characters, including Walter especially, and Jesse quite a lot. Pretty much all of the characters fail at like everything. No one is ever triumphant. No one is ever victorious. Sometimes they are, sure. Other than like maybe Gus, all of the characters, they're never winning, which I think makes them more like three-dimensional and real. The best scenes in particular are with Walter and Hank, when Hank doesn't know that he's Heisenberg. Those are really well performed. The guy who plays Hank, who's also, by the way, in Lethal Weapon 2, that's a tip. He was really good at like being oblivious to Walter's know-how of making meth, essentially. And every scene with Gustavo Fring, what a performance, man. His physical acting with how he's like OCD and everything. I would love to reflect more on him in the Better Call Saul video, which I want to do. Another thing I want to talk about is how the show shows you everything, which is what a show is meant to do. But the show will visually illustrate something to you most times than rather tell you something. So for example, in season 4, the plot with the poison, I won't go into detail, but the plot with the poison, you figure out who's behind the poisoning through the last image of the season. And it's like, oh, I understand. Like, it's very cleverly done how they visually show you that kind of stuff. The ending is perfect. That's it. It's a great ending. In comparison to Game of Thrones, or even Succession to a degree, I didn't love that ending. Like I said, Vince Gilligan's really good at building something up and then nicely pushing it down and then cutting to black, the end. Obviously, there's El Camino as well, which is fine. I think it just feels like a special episode starring Jesse. But yeah, so I am now scared of Walter. He is a very terrifying person by the end of season 5. I'm going to shave my head like him. I would definitely rewatch this show in another 10 years or even 20 years when I completely forget about it. I think it's quite ageless. Let me know if you've watched it and if you like it or if you hate it. I don't know. I appreciate you. I will be outside cooking melons. I will be cooking melons, not meth, melons. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.